Hello and welcome to another episode of Tobie and Scott Discuss Books. So say hello to Scott. Hello Scott, how are you?
Hello, how you doing, Toby?
Very well, thank you. Very well, good. Another week's passed and
Another week has passed.
yeah, exactly. Um, like last week, we hadn't finished the latest short story by Stephen King, and so we did two random books. Unfortunately, that is the same this week.
What
We
have
still
you?
failed, or I have anyway, to read any more of that book. So we're going to do two random books again.
What have you got
So
for us this week, Toby? What have you got for us this week?
So for me, my bringing to the table is Joe Hill's The Fireman.
Nice. Are you able to do this without spoilers?
Yes.
Good, because that's on my list. So I want you to kill that one for me.
Yes, I can. That saves me a lot of, because I didn't really want to go into too much spoilers.
Cool. So I guess, listen, beware. We're going to try not to spoil, but there might be some inadvertently.
I'll give you an overview of how much of a non-spoilery episode do you want?
Well, I'd like to be able to read it. Like, you can tell me what it's about, and
okay, yeah,
just take me to the halfway point. You can take me to the peril and the setup.
Okay,
Right.
I know right. Okay, so basically, it's I think a rather apt book for the current times with the old COVID and everybody being in lockdown and whatnot, because this is a post-apocalyptic, not so much horror, maybe a thriller. So it's set in a world where a virus called Draco Incendiary Tyranothyron, something like that, not really
Right.
probably, but more commonly known as dragon scale, has affected the human race. So it's like a spore that initially shows up on the skin as like a black line or vein that starts to spread. And then over time, it starts to scale and the skin starts to turn scaly. And then, because it's a virus, its sole purpose is to replicate and survive. So when the host that it's on the skin of, gets to a point where they're starting to panic and they, become really nervous and unhappy and just unsettled by the fact that this thing is growing. And although it's not affecting them in any way, adversely, it's still growing. And when they start to panic, it starts to react to that and increases its spread. So therefore, you get this cycle of people panicking they've caught it. So therefore, it gets worse. The virus starts to spread to the point where it covers the entire body, and then they spontaneously combust.
Okay.
They burst basically. And this is spread quite rapidly throughout the city, because as soon as this virus explodes the person it's inhabiting, the ash then floats up into the air and infects everything out.
Let's see.
If you touch it, it gets in your eyes, it gets in your mouth, anything like that, then you've got it. It just poof, 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 poof. And over time, you find out that's what happens and why the world ends up in this post-apocalyptic state. But we see this through the eyes of a female character who's our protagonist, called Harper. She is a nursery nurse, so she works with young children. And we open with her I believe we open, if I remember rightly, in a classroom, and she's teaching. And one of the kids becomes distracted by something going on outside. And it's a man stumbling across this courtyard who has this disease. And that's where you are introduced to her, the disease and everything.
Society is still running at the beginning.
Yeah. So that 1 million people have it at the beginning of the book, but it's spreading as quickly as COVID did. And she's pregnant as well. So she sees this happen at the school, and then goes home to her husband and tells her husband about it. And he's a bit blasé about it, because it's all sort of happening off in the distance. It's not. This is the first time it's come to a thing, and he's kind of like, tetchy, but not overly overwhelmed by it. He seems like a decent guy, but that his character rapidly unfolds not to be the nice person he originally turned out to be because of the panic of the virus and everything, and him catching it. And his wife decides that she's going to, because she's got like the Mary Poppins syndrome, where she thinks everything is good and sees everything through rose-tinted glasses. So she volunteers at a local hospital where the cases of dragon scale are prevalent, and he's not happy about that. And she's pregnant as well. But so we follow that through her eyes. There's a thing that happens between her and the husband. And while she's in the hospital, a dragon scale person explodes and the hospital catches fire. And she's rescued by the title of the book, The Fireman. And he's there. He's brought a kid in called Nick, who plays a big part as well, who's deaf. So you've got these three main characters, and he's this big, hulking, great, big, stereotypical, burly guy, put your arms around you, bear of a man, but very quiet and subdued, and doesn't really say a lot throughout the novel at all. Actually, he's just there. And yeah, so that happens. He rescues her, and then you follow her on this journey as society's falling down around them, to this where the book is. So that's the first half of the book, or the first third of the book. The second third of the book is about the establishment of where they are. Where it's not so much about what the virus is or where it came from or any of that sort of thing, because it's just you're seeing it through a small town, one person's eyes. So it's very localized to the area and to the people that you meet. And you live it through like news clippings and stuff like that.
Right. I'm guessing the novel takes place over the pregnancy.
Yes. Yes.
So it's not like a spanning epic of 10 years after.
No, it's all within the space of 9 months.
Okay.
So yeah. So then, do you want me to go any further?
I mean, if there's prevalent plots that can further the conversation, who is it written by?
Written by Joe Hill.
Joe Hill, and that's famously, well, I guess not famously, but a lot of people don't know. That's Stephen King's son, right?
Yeah. This one's signed, which I'm really proud of, by him. I picked it up in a Waterstones, just like 20 quid, I think it was, and it was just like, this one's signed by the author. I was like, bloody hell, I'm having that. But it's so, yeah. And then you've got the second half of the book, which is about kind of living with this increasing scale disease, the panic of the baby, because and the society that she falls into and in with, and how they deal with it.
Is there a sense throughout the book that society is getting worse towards the end of the book, or it's hit a point where it's trying to rebuild? Like,
now this is
in two halves of the book.
In my research, Joe Hill mentioned that he was reading Cormac McCarthy's The Road. It was an interview that he'd done with some newspaper. He was reading Cormac McCarthy's The Road, and he said that he read this section in there where society had gone down the route of depravity and stuff like that, and there was people spit roasting a baby over a fire. And he said he couldn't work out whether it was the most horrific thing he'd ever read in a post-apocalyptic novel or the funniest. And he said that what he found difficult about these post-apocalyptic novels is that, and I think this is mirrored in what's going on today, the sense that the human race will go that direction, into the dark side and the roasting of babies and the eating of each other and attacking each other. He said, we're not naturally like that. We like hugs. We find comfort in each other. We there is a sense of togetherness when the chips are down, on the whole. not everyone, but on the whole, that is the general population.
Right. I guess it's easier for us
Because-
to explore the darker side of human nature because it takes you into more, I guess, exciting areas of writing.
So in this, he calls this the anti-apocalyptic novel, in the sense that it's not all bad. There isn't, there are factions of the book where you see the darker side of society, but on the whole, everybody's trying to get by and help each other. And that carries throughout the second part of the book. And then we get into the third part of the book where twists come in and reveals happen. And
right.
Sort of.
Okay.
It's an absolute beast. It's like 700 and something pages. Yeah, 746 pages. So it's a tome of a book.
Does it read easy?
Yes.
Some big books do and some don't.
No, it doesn't. It is a bit slow in the middle.
Like, does it need to be that length? Slight trimming, maybe.
Yeah, you could possibly trim a little bit at the middle. It goes into quite a bit of depth about about characters that you meet in the second part of the book, and it's interesting what happens to those characters and the amount of depth they go into, and where their trajectory takes them, that sort of thing. So you could possibly trim a little, but who am I to react to this book? I mean, I read it, I thoroughly enjoyed it from cover to cover. It was very well written. There were some really nice action sequences in there.
Okay, it's certainly on my list to read book. I know I haven't read any of Joe Hill's, and I think you've told me in the past that although you like this one, it's actually not his best one. But the synopsis, I guess the plot I know of, is the most intriguing of everything of his I've read. Like, this is the one that pulls me in the most, even if people tell me that some of his others are better. This one is the highest on my list.
Yeah, no, he sets the world up really well. There are some really nice tight sequences in there, and yeah, there's some really good action sequences, gunplay and all that sort of thing, which you don't often. I haven't often read about. Like squad-based sort of things going on.
Okay, so there's some sort of modern action, I suppose. SWAT
exactly.
or gun action.
And he's got some great. It's grounded, but it has fanciful elements as well. That sort of thing.
The very name of the you call it like a spore infection, the virus.
Yeah.
It sounds very fantastical.
Yeah, 75% of the spore, the virus, what he took from to make the virus up, actually exists in the real world.
Okay, because it did remind me of, I guess, because you used the word spore, and when you're when you're talking about it bursting, I was initially thinking of those plants that sort of build an air pressure until they pop. And I don't know if you see them with those macro lenses in David Attenborough programs, they do sort of spread outwards. When was this written?
2017, I think, or maybe 2016.
So it's fairly recent in the world.
Yeah, 2016.
Oh, okay. I am wondering what came first. I mean, it doesn't share that many similarities, and I guess it has been done before. I know Brian Aldiss does a lot of this stuff, but the Girl with the Gifts has I guess a similar like, a way of infection with the sporing. I
would say this got some. Having seen The Girl with the Gifts, not read it, this has more in common feel and pacing and delivery with Station 11.
Okay, that's a book we both read some while ago. Yes. I didn't mind it, but I didn't love it. It was quite meandering, and I guess it was made up of 3 timelines. And only one I particularly enjoyed. One
Yeah.
I had no time for, and one was semi-interesting. But it did sort of, I guess it took its time, that book. It was never in a hurry.
Yeah, that's kind of what the Fireman's like, but it has a bit more popcorn action-based stuff sequences than whereas Stations 11 is very sort of meditative and deliberate.
And I guess you could say, at least to a point, it shares similar themes on, like, so Stations 11, a large part is set in a post, like a sort of white humanity, and there is a team of, I guess, actors and musicians who are just touring, putting on Shakespeare plays. I guess you get the feel it's gone back to almost a medieval style of sort of trading and growing crop, and so there are kind of villains, but it's like that main group of people are just kind of artists putting on shows around the world. So that although there's danger, it's not like desolate, and everything is about survival.
Yeah, when I was going back through reading this in my head, there were elements I was thinking, right, did that happen in this, or did that happen in Stations 11?
Okay, right, yeah.
The line between the two. It also, there's a lot of this is the Stand, basically. It's been labelled since it came out, because it's post-apocalyptic. Obviously, Stephen King's The Stand is post-apocalyptic, and there are similar elements. Again, in this thing that I read, he has characters that have got nods to characters from The Stand. Like there's a woman called Mother Carol, who's very much in the vein of Mother.
Because I mean, when you were describing it, I mean, The Stand was coming to mind, knowing that it's Joe Hill, Stephen King's son, and like not just the size of it, but we're going to start off. I guess in this case, not pre-apocalypse, but life is normal for our characters, and we have the pregnant lady, and you know the events take over, and they're forced to move and go on.
You get the deaf kid is called Nick, and Nick Andros was the deaf kid or the deaf guy in The Stand. Those are the two tenuous links that he referenced when writing. And also, another tidbit: the title, The Fireman, was originally the title that Ray Bradbury was going to use for Fahrenheit 415, 514, 451, whatever it is.
Okay, yeah, I think I knew that.
I heard that title and thought that's a really great title, and then he released the book and changed it to that, Fahrenheit 451, and he's like, right, I'm going to nick the title then.
I'm quite a fan of that book. I feel like we should do it one week.
I've never read it.
Was that before or after he wrote it? Like, he had the idea of a fireman in a novel, or he
was just talking about the
titles? But I guess I'm asking, like, was the fireman already in it, and then he decided to call it that, or did he come up with a title and then go from there?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. So you like this overall?
Yeah, definitely. It was really good. I've read 2 of it now, maybe 3. I'm currently reading short stories. I'm about halfway through Snapshot, which is actually quite good so far. And the other one I read was Heart Shaped Box, which I absolutely loved. I thought that was an amazing book.
I thought it was Nosferatu.
Nosferatu is another one. That's the other one I've read. That was an audio book.
I have seen that floating around on AMC, the TV show version, but I haven't.
He writes really good, strong female characters, I think. Because Harper in this is really strong, obviously, female character. Then you've got the girl in Nosferatu, the mother. She's like, it's resilient rather than strong, because she's actually got a lot of issues going on. Alcoholism, drugs.
You ever because this is going to kind of come up in the book I'm going to review, but do you ever get the sense that although he's writing strong woman, you know it's a guy writing this? Is it ever problematic, or are any reviews of it being problematic?
Yeah, is it?
I mean, I'm guessing they're kind of post-apocalyptic and adventure, so you can get away with more because you're
Yeah.
out of the world element, and it's. I'm just guessing it's not really books about womanhood or.
No, no. It's a woman in the same situation. And it's just a character dealing with an extreme situation and how they would react to it. So it's about, if you develop good characterization and you have a natural character, then, which I think he does really well, then it shouldn't feel cliche because they'll do things that they would naturally do. It's when they start doing things that don't feel natural and it jars with what you expect them to do, that then you know that something's gone awry. And I don't think that ever happens or hasn't happened yet in many of the books I've read.
Okay, yeah. So the lead is pregnant through, I'm guessing, at least half the novel. I've read a few where maybe not the main character, but like an action or horror, and it often feels like it becomes boring, or it became too easy that I guess it represents you've got to protect this innocent life. But I feel like it's not always done well, especially I guess films.
Yeah,
It can kind of feel lazy sometimes, right?
yeah.
Like who is the most vulnerable person that society would want to feel obliged to save, or that you would want to save because there is like a whole life that's had no chance. How does that come off in this? Is it a first or third person narrative? Do you know?
Ooh.
Like a week ahead?
Yeah, third person, I think. Is
Okay.
that right? Yeah, pretty sure it is.
Hmm.
You're on the shoulder of Harper through most of the story. So I
Okay.
guess that would make it first person, would it?
Hmm.
Okay, so yeah, but probably first person. I don't think it often drifts away from her to somebody else. Although the Fireman has his moments. But yeah, we see the world through Harper's eyes, and the pregnancy's always there, but it's never the main focus. It's not about.
Are you reminded of it every page or every other page?
No.
Okay, it's quite a big book.
Yeah, it just comes in and out, and depending. The closer you get to the pregnancy, the more urgency there is behind
Right, of
it.
course.
And the long treks and all that sort of stuff. He takes his toll. And some of the things she has to go through, the situation she finds herself in, makes it difficult. But no, she is written really well. She's very well rounded. Maybe a little bit too rose tinted, but that is the Mary Poppins syndrome thing that she deliberately.
I'm not. I guess I've heard that before, but I've never really used it or seen it used. Is that something within the book, or something you've
within the book? He references Mary Poppins quite often.
Okay, and that means like someone who just always sees the best in things.
Yeah, because if something good happens, she wants everybody to burst into song and celebrate.
Okay, I see. Right.
He fantasizes this sort of scenarios. So yes, it's what was I going to say? The Fireman, going back to the big burliness, he is very protective. He is very matriarchal, the alpha male type of thing. He has that sense of. He's probably one of the most easiest characters in the book to write, I think, because he is a collection of cliches of the big, strong, muscular guy, quiet, brooding, dark, but also alluring and aloof and frustrating, and all of those sort of stereotypical things that you find in those sorts of romance novels and Pride and Prejudice.
A nice Heathcliff.
Yes. Yeah.
So we've had feedback that we don't go into the themes enough.
Yes.
And it doesn't always feel that simple. especially because our research is often done the morning of.
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw you in it, but I will ask if what would you say the fireman represents? If he's not the star of the book, but the book is named after him, and I assume it has to be more than just he liked the idea of the title being the fireman. If you, even if it's reaching, what would you say he represents in the book? Or have I thrown too much for hardball?
It's a good question because you've chosen the right character to pick. Because his story arc is huge and what he goes through is transformative. But without going into spoilers, it's really difficult to quantify what exactly he is and what he becomes and what happens and what does he represent. Because, like I said, he feels like this big family man that just puts his arms around you and will protect you. But most of the rest of the thing is just like, right, well, I've done what I need to do. I'm now going to be over here in the background. But when you need me, I'll just come in and douche.
Because it sounds like he starts off where a lot of these similar characters would end off in a novel, like I guess like the Han Solo type, where like they need to learn throughout the events that other people, and in this case, like we said, the baby represents new life and the future. This character in other lesser post-apocalypse needs to sort of stow their own selfishness and greeds and fears for himself and see that bigger picture that the future and stuff matters. But it sounds like this character starts there.
He's definitely on the doorstep of it. I mean, he's a reluctant hero, but he's a fireman, so
I guess it's
already a hero in most people's eyes. He literally has to walk in a door and women go weak at the knees. It's that sort of thing. So he's already at that point in
I guess it's sort of in his nature to just sort of do the right thing, or just to be in harm's way for the betterment of something.
But like I said, he is hardly in the book. He's just, when he is there, he's just woof. This just dwarfs everybody else in the
He's like the Fonz. He's like the Fonz in Happy Days. He's not in every episode, but everyone knows him.
It's difficult because the ending is interesting.
Okay, I'll have to. We just keep adding stuff to our reading list.
So I would give this book 8.
Okay, so you thoroughly enjoyed it. So when we read Stephen King, he often links to his sort of King universe or novels, or even if they're not linked in the universe, there's just cheeky references. But is this something that Joe Hill does? Now you've read a few, although there's nods to Stephen King, like to his dad, but not actually inverse, right? Like they're not connected in any way.
No. I don't think I've read anything yet. Like Nosferatu is probably the one that's got the most Easter eggs, if you want to call them.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't seem like something, because the whole point, I think you told me that why is he Joe Hill and not Joe King, was initially when he started, he just didn't want to have that weight of, being a Stephen King son.
Yes.
We have Sleeping Beauties on our list. Is that's Stephen King's son, right? So that's him and his dad.
That's Owen King.
That's Owen King. Okay, that's a difference. Okay, because the little I know is that is female led also.
Yeah, it's a set in a female prison, isn't it? So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah, I kind of look forward to that one as well. I know that's a big epic.
I think the virus in this is really good. I love the way that the virus interacts and the way it works, and some of the revelations and things like that about virus. There's an interesting close.
Okay. Do you want to? I guess it's not really an anticlimactic question, but like within the world, How was it relayed in the media, the virus? Because now, we're living, this is recorded in 2020, well into the year. So we often books, they sort of do or don't address it, but how it's sort of reported around the world. And I guess now we can say we kind of know how these things.
Yeah, and then this is very good. Like I was saying, it's like, I think what happens in here and the anti-apocalyptic take on this novel that Joe Hill deliberately stuck with is being mirrored in what's happening now. Like, people aren't going savage. Yes, there was a rush on stockpiling toilet rolls and soap and hand wash, but that settled down after a while. Now everybody's like, well, it's not actually, we can do this. All the clapping and all the coming together and going around and helping people that need help in the community and putting yourself in harm's way, going to make PPE and all that sort of thing. That sort of stuff comes out in this book. And there's similarities to that. And what was your question again, sorry?
Like within the book, you said you see snippets of the media and newspapers. Like how does it?
So it's now, because it's not massively prevalent. It's just happening, and she very quickly finds herself isolated from the rest of the world in the book. So you kind of don't get a massive load of news stories or her seeing TV things, but that when you do get that, that's how it comes through. She'll hear it on the radio, or she'll see it on Twitter, or it'll come through the TV and like a news broadcast or something. Her husband will be watching it, glued to it when she comes home from the hospital. She's working in a hospital, she gets tidbits through there. But within the first 200 pages, you're out of an environment where she's able to absorb, and you as a reader are able to absorb this external information overload, as it were, about what everything else is happening, and then you just get snippets from people who are running and surviving, and this is happening over here. Well, I've heard if you go over there, there's like a refuge, but if you've got the disease, then this will happen to you. And
yeah, I do look forward to, I guess, future post-apocalypse novels. Now, one thing I find, I'm listening to the radio a lot these days, and there's just a high amount of corporate adverts which push through care and then try and sell you a car. It's kind of strange and surreal, but it seems like a lot of the big ones are doing it. It's like this sort of harp comes on and it talks about safety and care and getting through it. And then, I don't want to say a brand name, it tells you a deal where you can go out and buy a new car or a sofa. And it seems quite strange and surreal. I don't know if you listen to podcasts. I was listening to the Adam Buxton one, and he was talking with Louis Theroux. And it's funny because they were talking about the things that have become like kind of sweet and endearing, that have sort of turned and become annoying, whether they're true or not. And they're saying one thing is people saying that it's going to bring the best out of us and bring the world together. Like that was kind of a saying in the beginning some months ago, but now, whether it's true or not, it's just this kind of irritating cliche. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, we'll see what the future holds when it comes to...
but that's, again, I think that what you say there, those are characters in this book that would say that, and there are characters in this book that would say, no, of course not. Why? It's everybody. It is going to change people for the good. There is going to be this massive shift in the way that people operate and talk with each other, and how close it will bring communities together. Seeing it through rose-tinted glasses, always looking for the best in a bad situation, and that's what Harkerism is, definitely.
I mean, I guess the reality is it can bring out the best, but it also can bring out the worst.
Yeah. So it's interesting to read a post-apocalyptic novel that doesn't focus double down on the bad, the grim, like the Walking Dead series. Like, it got to a point where it was just like, I don't want to see people getting killed all the time. There is no hope in this.
I am
to cling on to make it through the story. I don't want a hopeless tale that ends badly, because why would I read that? Good feelings, good feelings.
Well, we're
yeah.
on the road next week then.
Yes. Oh, the only book I managed to read in a day, The Road.
And what a one it is.
Belted through that book. It was so good, but it was really negative.
Unfortunately, I'm going to have to talk about The Road a lot more coming up. I'm not reviewing The Road, but you'll see when it comes. But before that, any more thoughts on The Fireman?
I think it'd make a good film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that in there that would. I think it'd either a good mini series or a film or something like that. Netflix mini series.
I get the feel, and I guess just from the little I know of it, and like some of your descriptions, like it's one of those books that quite easily plays out as a film in your head when you're reading it.
Mm-hmm. You can tell he's a comic book writer.
I guess sort of not necessarily Michael Crichtonish, but yeah, just vivid enough and action-packed enough that it's sort of not writes itself, but you can see it lend easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it doesn't go the way you think it's going to go.
Okay, there are some surprises.
Yeah, definitely.
Just in a good way, like when you first read it, because sometimes there's a mix when things, the whole subvert expectations has become a big thing in the last few years due to these Star Wars.
When I read reading the reviews, a lot of people said that they had expectations on a direction the book was going to go, and it didn't do that, and therefore they were like, it knocked the wind out of their sails a bit, so that they therefore found it plodding and a bit sort of, this isn't what I wanted to read. Suddenly finish it, whereas other people loved the fact that he subverted it and went a different direction. And
right, so it's sort of down to reader's discretion whether they, want to be led on. I guess it kind of reminds me of we recently watched the follow-up to Get Out, Us.
Oh yes.
And it hits a halfway point, and it just goes where I can imagine no one was expecting it to sort of broaden out, and a mixture of being excited and not knowing how it's going to play out as a result, but also disappointed that we're not going to go down the route I thought it would. So a sort of, I don't know, bittersweet, but just a mix of wishing there was an alternate version where I get the movie I wanted. This one.
Brilliant. Okay, your turn then. What have we got for us, Scott?
I don't have a physical copy, so I'm just going to flash you a picture of the cover. And this is Anna by, I'm going to try and say his name correctly, Niccolo Amaniti. I hope I've got that right. Apologies if I'm not. It's an Italian writer that is, I don't know. This is. I think this is the main cover, the one that I read. Unfortunately, this is a post-apocalyptic novel, and so
this isn't the Anna that's been made into a film.
No, this isn't. I'm not sure of that movie.
No, I didn't think it was. That's right then.
No, I did look into this because the writer is quite a prolific. He has had a lot of dealings in television and film, but this, as far as I know, hasn't had anything made. So it's set in Sicily, and we start off, and every adult has died globally,
right.
As far as we know globally, and we sort of have no real look at outside.
Adult defined how?
No adult has survived.
Yeah, but when does adulthood start?
So there are basically rumours that it started from Belgium, but I guess similar to the Fireman, at no point does it look into what the issue. They call it the red fever.
Okay, but sorry, I mean, what age does adulthood start? So everybody dies from, you said adulthood. Every adult has died.
Every adult dies, and basically puberty brings it on. So,
right, okay.
But in this, they sort of say, I kind of different, but at least in around this city, like 14, 15.
Right, anybody above 15 dies?
Yes.
Right, okay.
and it's called the Red Fever. And it just starts off as red blotches on your arm, and then within a week to 2 weeks, you die.
Damn.
Yeah. So we start off with Anna and her brother Asta, and she is about 13 and he is about 11.
Okay.
And for this first part, we're flashing back. So we get a little sense of her mother and how she met her father, and how quickly this came about. They call it the red fever. I don't know if it counts as a virus or a fever, but a sickness. And so the mother's quite pragmatic. She is basically writing on her deathbed like a big sort of book of what the kids are going to have to do and how to survive.
Right, okay.
It's all things like, where to find water, store food, save electricity and batteries, use candles. And it's a really well written book. I absolutely loved it, and going back over, I sort of wish I could sort of take the time to read it again. Okay, so I'm gonna go. No spoilers. So
no spoilers.
We are the majority of the story is set. Like I said, she's 13, and her brother doesn't really go out the house, so she's got this manual of what to do, and through flashbacks we kind of see what that is. And we see, like, for example, how she's kind of forced to grow up fast because she has no choice and she has a younger brother to look after. Like, the last thing in her mother's book is what to do with her body. And she basically says, you're not going to have the strength to carry me, so just open the window and shut the door and then wait 100 days. Mark it off. Like, here's 100 boxes. Every time it gets dark, fill one out. And then I'll be decomposed enough that you might be able to carry me out and bury me. And so this is the world we live in. And it's a strange mix of gruesome and nightmarish, but because all the kids are so young, they get quite frank and matter-of-factly about everything. So they very quickly get used to death and bodies and corpses. And so these two stay in their farmhouse. They're sort of in the outskirts of the city. And for the longest time, I think she says one of her neighbors were like preppers, so she can go and get food from them because they died. And just slowly but slowly, she has to go further and further out.
Mm-hmm.
And one day her brother gets sick, but he's probably too young for it to be the fever. But she knows enough about town that she can go in, and she knows about sort of medicine and drugs. And so she...
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The fever is passed by contact. Is she immune to it? If she was to stay in the house, would she be immune?
Everyone has it.
It just happens once you hit 15.
Yeah, it's sort of activated more so when you hit puberty.
Right, okay.
And so I guess another key thing the mother says is that someone somewhere will survive and someone will have a cure. You just have to sort of stay strong and hope that comes in time. So everything I'm going to describe is going to kind of feel like a YA book, but I feel like it's really above that. Like, because we have a 13-year-old girl, and I guess she kind of goes on a hero's path. But when we talked about the Fireman and the road, we talk about like how bleak this is. And I guess a large part of this book is like, how do you come of age when that kind of means your imminent death? Like, we don't get any more look other than the mother's diary of what the red fever is. There's like zero medical reports. It just happens so quickly. The book is third person, but it's very close to Anna.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know things she doesn't know. The book never tells us what's happening the other side of the door.
Okay.
And so when she does have to go into the city, it is feral, as you can imagine. You basically die at 14, 15, and then the younger kids sort of come into age. So there is this feral brutality. There are a lot of like little kids following the bigger kids, but the bigger kids don't really know what they're doing either. They just followed the bigger kid that had them. Death is pretty cheap. She kind of she's quite cunning. Like, so her brother hasn't really left the grounds of the farm, and he sort of wants to at one point, and she sort of knows enough to keep him in. Like, all she's really got is her mother's sort of, here is your guide. You know, try and live by this. But that's all she's got as the voice of an adult, and that's through the book the only voice of an adult we get. So she kind of tricks him. She says, like, I'm old enough to be vaccinated and you're not. And he still wants to come with her. So she knows where there's like a dead cow. So she says, like, okay, come with me. But if you smell death, it means he's coming for you. So you better run back. And she just leads him to this cow where he just freaks out and runs back. But it's just getting clear he's getting older and curious. And I think something it does well is, when you're young, time is sort of infinite and you're kind of impatient. And it sort of captures that well with the kids, because I think they do spend a good few years on this farm, just them two. And they sort of talk both about the infinite boredom, but the kind of adventure it is at the same time.
A bit like now.
And so with Zero Adult, like, and again, it's something it explores really well. It's just like, I guess, desperation, but even at such a young age, because they all kind of know, even if they weren't told it, they know that when you hit a certain age, you're going to die just by seeing everyone around them. So, like, the idea of a cure is a rumor, and it's just like, it's just fantastical. And every kid kind of has their own folklore of what will work. There's talk of, like, if you eat sand with your food. So she meets a kid who talks about an old lady. They're like, there is an adult, and if she kisses you, you'll live. And she sort of scoffs it, but she just clings to this book that someone out there is working on it. And so the next time she sees him, it's like, yeah, they're gonna find the old woman and burn her and drink her ashes. And so every kid kind of has their own folklore, and it's, I guess it's nice in, like, it's that exploring like how desperate you can get.
Yeah.
And more so when you're a kid, because not gullible, but you know, the fantastical and the realities are meshed up. And since we're 5 years in, so she's lived in this world for about 5 years. You know, that's how long there's been no adults. So
you know, you join her at this 5-year period, and you're flashbacking through the book.
Yeah, I mean, the flashbacking stops pretty early. That's if the book is in 3 parts. But she's basically forced to leave the farm. Some kids just sort of come through when she's not there, and they half kidnap, half convince, half seduce her brother to just join them.
Okay.
And a lot of it is building up to a hotel where, like I said, there is like an adult, and every kid thinks that a different thing is going to cure them. So there's a lot happening in this book, whilst not moving in a way. Like a lot of the criticism is that nothing happens, but I guess they mean in a plot structure. But like, for example, I think the first thing she does in the book is she fends off a savage dog, and she sort of tricks it into a car, and she just sort of attacks it, like stabs it with an umbrella. And then some days later, the dog is still alive but severely wounded, and she just takes pity and leaves it some food and some water and just leaves it. And then again later, basically, she realizes the dog has just sort of gotten better and is following her, but it's now submissive. Like, it's not her pet, but it's sort of like, you know, taken to her. And she is both quite wise and adult, but also super immature and childish. And we get this mix really nicely, just by the way she survives and thinks, but then can just turn around and, you know, get frustrated with childish things. Let's see what else I have written down. So yeah, like it never feels like it's pandering to kids. This feels like an adult book about kids, which
Is
you
it a young,
like about it.
is it a young adult book?
I mean, it kind of floats in that market,
Yeah.
but this is why we're talking about the road, because I'm going to try not to spoil this book, but like it is, everything is futile.
Right. Okay.
The hope we feel at the end is no, this is the last generation.
Yeah.
Like even if you could survive, it's too far gone. We are like the last generation. Obviously, no new babies are being born.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it kind of like I would put this up there with The Road. And
Okay.
it's not to say it's perfect. It has its flaws, but for me, as The Road does, you can see why they're there just to push the plot forward. And I have a problem with The Road. This is a Road spoiler ending, where everyone talks about the hopeful ending because the kid does find the people and they are good. So
Yeah.
there's hope of survival, right? But nothing in the book suggests that they're going to live. Like
No.
this is the end of days. And I feel like this has a same feel ending, but it kind of addresses it more, I guess, poetically. Like
Right.
it never really hits those melancholy depths because we're always following it from a kid. So they always kind of not distracted, but they have that kiddish thing of never lingering too much on anything.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
We get a mix of characters. She kind of, because she's growing and coming into puberty. There is like she meets a guy, and she starts getting confused by her feelings towards him. I guess these are the things that feel not necessarily crammed in, but 5 years gone feral. Not out of place, but I just don't know if you sort of have these same.
Yeah, those are your natural thoughts.
Like if this was year one and she was this age, it would kind of work. But now we're in this sort of foraging land. It sort of goes out like it would anyway. I was saying about like I was reading some reviews on it, and I don't know, some readers thought that it was not necessarily problematic, but you could tell that a guy was writing about a young teen girl. I think there's talks of like getting her first period and how kind of easily she deals with this.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed to come do
you agree with those thoughts?
I don't remember it being an issue, but then I guess that comes down to like I took it as it was told. I actually thought the writer was a woman when I first read it, because it's Nicolo.
Mm-hmm. Looks like a bit well known.
But I guess those are issues that someone who's been through that would understand. So it's not really for me to say with it. Oh no, that doesn't sound believable, right?
So as it's all kids, I guess issues of the usual issues that you come across in those types of addiction, alcohol, drug use, and all of that is not very prevalent in this type of novel.
No, there absolutely is like alcoholism and some drug use when they can find it, and it is nightmarish. Like
that's what I thought.
She has to go to the hotel. I think they refer to it as the hotel. So she has to do a kind of journey to where she thinks her brother will be, and it's sort of a big festival. They have some electricity, and she gets wasted. I think it's against her will. Like a bit of both, but this is probably the hardest to read chapter because the narration becomes in a drunken state, and simple encounters become nightmare paragraphs because she's so wasted.
Okay.
And everything's happening at this festival climax is already nightmarish. That not that you lose it, but like not that it's frustrating, but you're like, damn, this is just a nightmare to navigate through. Like what's happening is a nightmare, and we're making it harder by being drunk. Remember Grand Theft Auto where you could get the character drunk?
Yeah.
The graphics would sort of mirror that. There's sort of some of that going in narration.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which, for better or worse, I guess it's interesting, but I guess if I'm honest, I wish we could stick with it. Like, I'm happy to read how drunk she is, but I don't want to get drunk with her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't think I want to go any more forward. This was a really good book, and it seems like he's pretty big in Italy, and he's pretty well received here. But I don't know why he's not massive. Like, I would put this up there with The Road. I feel like this. I guess The Road hit super poetically, but this just feels like it does some things The Road does, but better. I guess it on the face of it, it would have tropes of YA fiction, but they kind of don't follow that. Like, there's no heroic journey. There's no saving the people. She's not really in it for anyone else or to become the warrior or the one who will change the face of it. And it's I don't know.
You liked how it ended and everything. You were happy with the ending.
I did, yeah. It is. I guess it's not a spoiler, but we hit a midway point where what you think will take you to the end of the book wraps up.
Okay.
Keep going, and I guess at times it can feel like, was this a short story that expanded, or was this the intention? I think the translation reviews come in well. I think you asked me last week how I felt it was translated because I was but nothing felt ugly, and I always felt like I don't really know what to say when I can't comprehend what the original text is, so I can only go off reviews. And I think it's pretty well received. I think his previous book did very well, and it's the same translator.
Okay, so what was his previous book?
So he's done about 6 or 7, but four that to me look like they stand out. There's about 3 or 4 that I will probably read, and the others are sort of mafia crime novels, which I don't think I would sort of look into. But they are, again, about sort of young teens, isolation, and sort of pre-adolescence. I guess it's a strange coming of age story.
Yeah.
Because there's like zero guidance. She has this book which it's almost like her mother couldn't prepare her. Like, there's wholeness in her, and a lot of it is spurred on by her brother. Like, she's just like, I don't know. I mean, if in this world, even that young, you need purpose. I know, like, TV show The Leftovers and a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff, that after the apocalypse, what is the purpose and survivor guilt? But I guess this is different because they grew through it. They didn't survive as adults, and like, her brother barely remembers the mother.
Right. Okay.
The brother was 5 when it happened, so I guess he remembers, but, like, as you can imagine, the severe changes of being 5 and every adult changing and being isolated in this farmhouse. There's like comedy moments, not comedy, but because we get that matter of fact child sort of quotes and point of view. There's a point where she gives her brother like a drug, and she says, "Oh, it's a depository," and he's like, "What does that mean?" She's like, "You have to stick it up your bum," and he's like, "The last time I put something up there, it was really uncomfortable. It was like the lid of a felt tip pen. Can I just swallow this?" She's like, "I don't see why not." And they're not. I don't know. They don't necessarily seem in for, like, the chuckles, although they are funny. They just sort of there to cement that these kids they don't really know what they're doing, and they can only go by what they know. I'm going to see my notes of much else.
So, let me think. Where does it sit? The world that he painted and wrote about and created versus, say, Stations 11 or The Stand or
it was interesting what you were saying about, like, a lot of writers want to go for the dark side of nature, right? And this, not that it falls in between, because they're so young, no one really is. you do get bad kids, and I guess you get wicked kids, but you're always reminded that they are kids. Like when there's a leader of a gang, he's still a kid himself. And
is it kids acting like adults?
Hmm?
Are they painted like as kids acting like adults?
No, they're often, like I said, there's always a reminder, not just with Anna and her brother Asta, but like I said, they all have, like, she meets a boy called Petro, and they kind of become allies, and this is the one she's kind of going to for, but he is looking for a certain brand of trainer.
Okay.
He believes wearing these will protect him. And then, but he is also sort of the, so she'll scoff at him, but like everyone kind of believes they'll be exempt from it. And they laugh at others when they say that they will be. So there's a strange world. I guess it's this desperation of having to have something. Like the mother saying, someone somewhere will survive.
So this is interesting, right? Do you think it's playing themes? It's playing on the theme of religion and transposing it onto the kids. So she has this book, which is her Bible, in essence. And each of these kids has an urban legend or a myth that they created that will provide them with solace and hope, which is exactly what the Bible does for millions of people all over the world. Do you think there's any parallels?
Yeah, I guess you could for her. I mean, it seems more like it's going on like Chinese whispers taken to an extreme, and just like creating hope out of nothing.
Yeah.
Just you have to have something to believe in to move forward. Because we do meet kids who sort of show the signs of it, and they are at that point where they become further desperate and or just giving up. And Anna is probably the most hopeful of all the characters we meet. Not many of the characters get a chance to be hopeful. Like it is nightmarish and brutal. Like I think early on, like she's a survivalist. She's not really a fighter. She knows to run and hide. She knows to play the safest option first. Like she's traveling with a kid, and they see like a gang of boys, or like a gang of kids, and she just knows to drop the wheelbarrow full of like the things they have and just to run and hide. And the other kid just starts shooting at them. He sort of has the red fever, so I don't know if it's sort of implied that he's got not much to lose, but he just shoots at them when he doesn't have to, and they end up stoning him to death then and there. And you do get this picture, like no one really deals with corpses, so like throughout there are just like everyone is used, like the gruesome has become the norm.
Yeah.
It's not really scary in this world. Like, I mean, very early on, we I guess in psyche, like she doesn't want to take her mother out of the house, like is in the book. So she thinks like, okay, she covers him in rocks, and she covers her in jam, so the ants can eat her, and so one day she can bring the bones back into the house, which she does, and she sort of draws all over the bones and has them set up in her mother's bed. Which I guess plays into that you were saying, is there a theme of religion? Like, she kind of creates one out of her mother, right? Like, and I guess there's a huge, one other thing is, and I guess it's prevalent in kids, that fascination with the unknown and the different. Throughout, you get snippets of, I guess, other kids with deformities.
Yeah,
they are sort of held on a different level. And I mean, you have a kid. I don't know if you would have got more of this from me. Like I was saying, there's stuff where like the kids just have to do something, and it's just urgent for no other reason sometimes than when you're a kid. You just, the idea of waiting becomes super painful.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily it plays with that. It just captures that really well. I think it like I said, it writes young kids being kids, even in this situation, but for adults. Like it doesn't feel like, I probably wouldn't give this book to like the age of the kid. I don't know if I'd give this a 14-year-old because
It was really dark for a 14.
like, would you give The Road? How old would you? When would you give The Road to your daughter?
Oh, I'm probably about 25.
So yeah, but I mean, it's strange because going through the reviews, a lot of people bought this for their kid and ended up reading it, and whether enjoying it or not.
Yeah, does sound hopeless, dark, and depressing. To be honest with you.
I mean, but it's sort of filled with getting on with life. That's the strange thing about it is, I guess the characters aren't hopeless. We know as adults that it is, but the characters, kind of being kids, play through it, and there is that desperation in them, but they're quite easy to suppress it. Like I said, they can kind of have a belief that they'll be fine for no real reason, even when
so basically,
someone will tell them the exact thing, like, I just think that I'll be fine, I'm stronger than anyone else, and they'll laugh at him and then believe that about themselves.
Yeah. It's basically what it's saying is there's only 15 years left of the world in total.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The ending, it's it's probably only set over a month or so. It's not a big time span once it kicks off, and it's just, it kind of ends with, okay, what next?
Yeah.
Until that sort of big ending. I guess it's not interesting, but like why he chose this moment. Like he chose, like, I don't know what the youngest child in this world could be. I'm guessing there's a limit to how.
Well, 5 would be if she's been there since.
So that's her brother. Her brother is among the age of the youngest people, and we never get a look, as far as I can remember. Sorry if I'm wrong about this. We never look outside of her world, and we can only assume that this is the world. Like we never really leave Italy or Sicily. We sort of come in and about it and travel through.
So I didn't realise it was set in Italy.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should have said it.
Did you get flavour of Italy? Is it clearly Italy?
So, like all the names, the food, the places.
Because I very rarely.
Not necessarily the culture. I guess there are times when it feels like you could sort of do a Google search and switch out words to an extent, but
I guess
it does get beautiful descriptive, and it is road levels of destruction. I think she goes to a town and she describes it as like not one window is intact, not one building hasn't been smashed. Like everything has just been touched by this. And by this, we actually sort of mean like the destruction of kids.
Yeah.
There's no talk of like a war before this. How like
it's vandalism.
In the Stand, for example, there's this really exciting and scary bit of the military losing control to sort of other factions, and we're in and out of that at least for a short while. And there are, the military try to control it. There's no hint of that. It's just happened far too quick.
Right. Yeah.
So all the destruction we do read is just, I guess, the initial kids looking for food, and then kids just sort of getting comfortable, and kids will be destructive. I once watched a sort of reality TV documentary where these kids between, I'm not sure, maybe 12 and 15 were in a house, and they didn't know there was cameras and that their parents were next door, and there was food and there was just no adult supervision, and they didn't realize they were being watched. And they didn't go. It was a 2-day experiment, but nothing constructive came out of it. They sort of scratched up the walls. It's that thing of teasing. But once the first mark has been done, it jumps. Like one kid drew like a circle on the wall, and so the next kid, if you can do a circle, you can do anything on the wall. So they sort of like just smashed it up, really.
That's it. If one person throws a stone at a window, then the next person has to do it. Otherwise, they're going to look weak.
Yeah, but like the whole building is game, right? Like one window or 100 windows. So yeah, we do. It is I guess it's strange how the book is desolate to us, but the kids are kind of used to it, and it's
Yeah.
not always that grim for them. It's just the way it is. Like the food, they're always scavenging for food, but as far as I can remember, there's never really a lack of it. You just have to look further and harder. Like she survived because she's just had to go further and further for food, but she has always provided. And I guess that's a mix of just there being enough in the world, and the kids are always dying off. Like from day one, every kid who would hit that age would die off. So it's always a shrinking population.
Here's a question for you. Why has the mother written a book?
So we do get not the strangest thing, but within the backstory, we start before Anna was born. We get her courtship with Anna's father, and it was actually really nicely written. Like I was saying in Station 11, I felt like there was a main story, and the parts of it that were back in the past didn't really do anything for me. Whereas in this, even though it kind of tantamounts to the same, I did really enjoy it. It was much shorter, but it just talks in short but detailed passages how like it was a brief love affair, and then he inherited the farm. I think it's more of a cottage than a farm, and he wanted to sell it, but she said, let's keep it. And then, so he was in and out of the city, and he started having an affair, and they split up. But I guess that's where Anna gets it from, right? She was pretty pragmatic, like.
So she was doing this for no reason other than because that's the type of person she is. No, so she would have done it if there hadn't been a virus or anything.
No, this is on her deathbed. This is her knowing from like just the world and the newspapers that when you get it, you die, and her knowing that she's got it. Like this is all written. Like I don't think it's a particularly big book. I think it's just described as written in old school exercise books. It's just everything she could come in. She enforces to keep reading and to teach her brother to read.
Okay.
I guess just a guideline. I guess like you're saying, that the 10 Commandments, as it were, they're not always stuck to, but they're always there. I guess that's like it obvious parallels to Lord of the Flies, and like the only adult we get is Piggy through his auntie. Is we get through this book, which I don't remember. I'm pretty sure she loses it pretty early on for us, but she still had it for some. Like they spent a long time in isolation.
Okay, so basically the adults catch it. They have a period of time where they've got it, and it gets worse, and then they die. It's not like you wake up.
You're kind of bedridden. You can't function out. You sort of forget. Often, I was watching. I've been watching The 100, this sort of YA TV show, and there's just a season where they're talking about like radiation coming in, and like they're like, for example, they're like, we've got 100 days. Okay, so we have 100 days to make a plan. But you're like, no, you have 100 days till you die, but you can't work 100 days, right? I think like submarine and space films do it with oxygen when it's like you would lose like. Before that oxygen runs out, you'd still lose brain function and fall apart. You can't function until there's zero, right? Like the percentage has to be more. So when the adults get this red fever, it's like you soon get just tired and sick and bedridden. So there's no, you can't do much. Like she can only write down and prepare, like try and help them prepare.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds good. Desolate.
Yeah, we both picked.
Funny that.
So it does get compared to the Road and Lord of the Flies, and I can see why, but sometimes it feels kind of lazy. I guess like I do really like Lord of the Flies, and I like this. And although there's comparisons, I feel like they definitely exist in their own world, separately. I guess they do have to go down the same themes of like feral and reverting to savagery. It's interesting what you're saying. Like, I think there's a scene. At the back of the book, there's like book group questions, and one was how perplexed Anna is to, when she goes to the sort of motel, and a mix between a cult and a festival and a booze up, and it's twice as chaotic as it sounds, being that everyone is like, between 10 and 13 and getting wasted. They sort of have some electricity and set up like a light show, and she's perplexed. And the book group asks, like, why do you think Anna's perplexed? And I think one answer was like, she's never really seen art before, like something creative done for positive. But she does have it in her, I suppose, because she did like draw on her mother's bones.
Yeah.
And it's strange because you don't really get a sense that it's ritualistic or artistic.
Mm-hmm.
Most, I don't know, she just had an idea to draw on this thing that was her mother. And she did it, I guess. I think with this, less is more, because they are kids. And a lot of kids seem like they do stuff because they're testing, or because they can, or they don't really know why. I mean, like I said, your father, you must come through these.
They don't know how to process the feelings that they've got. So sometimes it's like when like some kids, when they see death, they laugh at it, or they find it funny or exciting, or because they just don't know the grand scheme of things or how to react to it. It's the first time they get that's the go-to. So I can imagine a lot of that's happening.
Like we get these snippets from her, right? Like I think at some point she tells her friend, who is like the sort of her male counterpart, like the male version of her almost.
Yeah.
She's like, I have to save my brother. And he just says, why?
Yeah.
Like the attachments come pretty cheap here. Like they're almost done out of just looking for leadership for the sake of, I guess it happens in Lord of the Flies too. Like the older kid will tell me what to do because I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then for some kids, this falls apart. And then for some, it's sort of like the only sort of structure that they sort of have.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, I really like this. I sort of listened back to some of our reviews, and I suddenly feel quite stingy on my marking.
Yeah.
But I give this like a 9. Like
that's high.
I'm a huge fan of The Road. I would really put this up there with The Road.
Yeah.
It seems like, I don't know. The reviews often say it's good, but not that good, or not what I was expecting. And I do wonder if it's like the cover feels pretty like it's just marketed wrong. It feels.
Yeah, it is clearly marketed. I have no idea that's a post-apocalyptic novel from that cover.
But I also feel like if your protagonist is a 13-year-old girl, it's hard to market outside of that target. So I get that conundrum. Like, I think it has sold well. I think the writer is pretty acclaimed. He doesn't seem like it. I don't know. I would have thought he'd be a bit of a bigger name from this, but maybe he is, and I just didn't know it. Maybe I just came onto him late. I don't know. That's kind of all my thoughts. I'm sort of worried I'm going to drop a clanger and spoil it. It's definitely worth a reading, and in a way, like less than half, I would say.
No, that's good. So what would you do? 9, you said, didn't you?
Yeah, like going through it and sort of snipping at it in the last few days, it just made me want to go out and buy another copy. I think I gave it away to a friend, and I just wanted to give it another read because it's pretty short. We're about 300 pages in this book.
Oh yes, I was going to ask how many pages. Is it 300?
And I think I read it in 2-3 days. That thing where you just end up staying up late, like staying up to 2 in the morning, just like I'll just get to the end of this chapter bit. I think it's broken down into like 3 chapters, like this, I guess, beginning, middle, and end. Yeah,
and you say you've read 4 of his?
No, there's 4 that sound interesting that I would read. I think they sort of.
You read this one of his?
Yeah, just this one. Okay. I think I just saw it in a bookstore and then flipped the back, and I'm quite like my sort of apocalypse stuff. Yeah. And this sounded, I think I got a lot more than I bargained for.
Wicked.
This seems like it should just be higher on the list of books that came out. Just reviewing it and trying to find information about it. It's not a lot came up. I'm guessing partly because it's called Anna. And a lot comes up when you Google Anna. But yeah, I think that's what I got for that one.
Wicked. Very good.
Apologies if I got the Italian names wrong or I didn't use enough. Yeah, strong and forced.
I'd say that was a pretty comprehensive review of apocalyptic novels.
Yeah, I'm just talking about doing the stand sometime because I feel like I've got a lot to say on that, but maybe we'll do that a year. We'll get through to the other side of this.
Yeah.
How are you doing on the library policeman?
How am I doing? About 50 pages in, maybe.
Okay, so it's about 200 pages, this one, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. I've got a long way to go. I don't know what's been going on, but I haven't had any enthusiasm to do anything really at the moment.
Well, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens next week. Yeah, have you ever read The Fox and Something? No, don't worry.
George Sanders?
It might be, yeah. It's like The Fox, the horse, and the something. It's like a mental awareness self-help book type thing.
Then no. I think the one I was thinking of is just called The Fox.
No. It just floated up on my phone today, and I was like, "Oh, that looks interesting." Loads and loads of really strong reviews, so it'd be interesting to read that one. Okay, Wicked, yes. That's it then.
Again, if you've read either of these books and agree or disagree, or think we missed the point, write it in.
Rights and all that lovely. We're going to keep doing it, so hopefully you'll start watching it and then keep watching it.
Yes. Thank you for watching this one. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.